Okay, and welcome to week 12. We're going to look at family and the world of work. What we're going to focus on will be things like what is the current situation for families in the world of work? What is the circumstances that families find themselves in? And in what ways do work and family life interact? Certainly in the history of our families, not always had dual incomes, or the work life has changed over time. And what kinds of care are available for the dependent family members, and what are some of the effects of unemployment on the family, and then also what kinds of family-friendly work arrangements can be made available at work now. Okay, so when we look at what we see here is just that, between 1987 and 2011, the average work week for individuals has decreased from 37.5 to 36 hours. While this may suggest a more personal time for individual level, in fact, overall family work hours have been increased because the number of dual earner families has increased. One family, two incomes is considered the new reality, and more families are affected by the interplay between work and family responsibilities. A significant societal trend is an increase in the number of women employed outside the home. In contrast, the labor force participation among men aged 15 and over has been declining slowly. In 1975, 52% of women aged 25 to 54 were part of the paid labor force, and in 2009, there were 82%. And so, even though the work hours have gone down a bit, this dual income means that more people are working to make the same amount of money. And what you're seeing here is these trends of percentage of workforce being men and or women over the age of 15, and that percentage, and you see that it's been increasing for women and decreasing for men. And this particular one here, you're looking at from 2009, roughly 69.7 of the mothers with children ages 3 to 5 were in the paid labor force, nearly double the proportion that were in the paid labor force in 1976. So that's a very significant feature in terms of how this is going to affect families when you consider that historically and traditionally women have been caregivers, in particular for children, and here more women are in the paid labor force, so that has an impact on the family dynamics. As work and home responsibilities change, families must balance time and commitment demands on various roles. Work demands can influence the family and vice versa, either negatively or positively, and such influences are called spillover. Now we're going to revisit this term a little later. Okay, and you're seeing here the characteristic single earner and dual income families. The proportion of dual earner couple families rose steadily from 40% in the 70s to a bit over 60% in the 90s when it began to level off some. While the proportion of dual earner families has remained constant over the decade from 2000 to 2010, the median income of these families increased more than any other family type, and you can see that in this particular um, graph here. Okay, so when we look at this dual income and family and the relationship to work, we need to consider there'll be a changing of roles. For women in particular, you're changing roles with either the traditional homemaker, so this is one direction that women can in some cases move towards. A second is planning a traditional marriage that ends what you end up in the labor force because of financial needs. The third is you've always wanted a career but reluctant to become mothers and homemakers. And then the fourth was you planned to have careers but circumstances prevented this. And so you find that the difficulty in terms of the direction, the shifts towards the roles of what is a husband and a wife have changed. Certainly as more families have entered into dual careers. Paths chosen seem to depend on a number of things: the stability of the marriage, job opportunities, ability of women's partners to earn enough so that she could stay home, and how rewarding she considers homemaking. And so if we carry on to what the sort of responsibilities are here, what we notice is that hard physical labor has been reduced through the introduction of utilities like electricity, running water, and some of the machinery that we use. Technology has made housework different rather than less. That even though we have these conveniences, it hasn't made people feel less busy. The amount of time spent on household work related to income levels, age, and quality of housing, personal standards for meal preparation and cleanliness. Now, shift from wage earner husbands to dual earner families has not meant an equal shift in household responsibilities. Most housework is still done by women. Rather, led to conflicts over just how housework and childcare should be divided. This is often called what is often known as the second shift for women. They go to work and then they come home and they do another shift of housework. Since men traditionally have not had to concern themselves with family care, some view housekeeping chores as unmasculine. Husbands tend to do the highest share of housework, about 35%, when partners earn equal amounts in the workplace. When children are present, both parents assume more work. Couples do not need a 50-50 division of unpaid work to be happy. However, they need to regard their division as fair. So usually more money, more sharing. However, equal 50-50 isn't always what makes for a happy relationship. It does vary, certainly from family to family. And we look at role expectations. Expectations of family members are a major stress in dual income families. Traditional ideals of family togetherness and quality time with children don't coincide with dual income families. Expectations of the employer and fellow co-workers may be anti-family. Shift work can cause major stress in families. Given the many demands of their time, dual earner couples often spend relatively little time with friends and extended family. When social networks are limited, families may experience lower levels of social support. And this may feel more challenging and higher levels of stress associated with having less social contacts. When we look at the work and marital happiness, studies of working mothers found little connection between the fact that mothers worked and their marital satisfaction. When individuals worked nights or rotating shifts, marriages were at a greater risk for separation. Another study found that women's perception that they carried unfair household responsibility in addition to their jobs was connected with marital dissatisfaction. When fathers were more involved with children, spouses tend to rate their marriages as happier. So when we continue on with this work and then we look at the issue of family conflict, this is defined as a form of conflict in which the work and family demands are mutually incompatible, so that meeting demands of one domain makes it difficult to meet the demands of the other. Family work conflicts have progressively worsened. Individuals must now fill in more roles than expected in the past, since a clear-cut separation of men's and women's domains in the family no longer exists. Many have problems balancing work and family, and this is where a couple of terms come into play. One is called role spillover. This is a situation where the family and work roles for time demands interfere with each other. So, some of the work expectations, you come home late, and then some of the family role responsibilities, it spills over. Some work ends up being put onto the kitchen table, and meals get eaten with work at the same time. That's role spillover. And role overload is the perception of being stressed or overwhelmed by the pressures of multiple family and work roles. And it can be at the different times of the year where this role overload might take more of a role in our lives. Men generally allow work to intrude in family activities, and women are more likely to let family responsibilities interfere with work. One of the features that enters into many families is care for family members, and caregiver strain in particular. It's a term used to describe the burdens of caregivers' day-to-day lives that can be attributed to the need to provide care or assistance to someone else. Now, in our current demographic, this puts the sandwich generation in a particularly dire spot. Dual income sandwich generation, looking after their own children, but also probably starting to care for adult parents. Relatively little consideration has been given to the interplay between family and work responsibilities and the care for aging family members. Much more attention has been paid to childcare. And so we'll look at childcare as an example. And childcare in Canada is closely tied to social attitudes towards women's work. Long held societal assumptions were that children are best off at home and looked after by their mothers. Daycare centers established only when it benefited society, either from the desire for better supervision of children or from the need need mothers to join the workforce. Childcare can be unregulated or regulated. Unregulated childcare is provided by someone other than the parents or the immediate family, whereas regulated care is usually center-based, where services are provided by college-trained early childhood educators and meet provincial standards. In the past decade, modest increase in the number of regulated spaces in Canada wide. Nevertheless, in 2010, space availability was only 20% of Canadian children between ages of 0 and 12. You can see a figure in your textbook, figure 12.2, to look at this childcare in Canada issue. If we carry on, what we notice is that childcare in Canada can be described as resting on four pillars: government-funded daycare and supports for childcare, income tax relief for families based on number of children and total amount of income, maternity and parental leave and benefits that can be based on the employment that you have, and universal and free kindergarten. The reasons for these types and levels of childcare: no national policy for childcare. There isn't a national policy that every province must provide in the same manner. It's an individual by province. Social and political attitudes towards such care are mixed. With the exception of Quebec, many families have problems with the cost of childcare. Changes in availability and cost of daycare affect women more than it does men because they are still expected to provide the bulk of the care. Several factors can influence the kind of childcare parents choose: the age of the child, the parent's income and job type, family characteristics, the community in which they all live in. Again, you can see the cost breakdown in a table in this chapter, table 12.4. Now, I have already alluded to in the sandwich generation that sometimes the care for family members is for the elderly family parents. As baby boomers ages will the growing need for elder care services in Canada. Growing recognition from policymakers that the aging in place movement has been unintended negative consequences for family members who care for seniors. That if aging in place usually often means aging in the place where you are able to receive some family supports and services from family members rather than paid people in an institutional type setting. Just over 1 in 5 employed Canadians has responsibility to care for elderly relatives. Women bear the brunt of elder care, and in 2007, 15% of women caregivers were the ages 45 to 54 had to cut back on work hours in order to look after aging parents. Now, there's certainly one of the big issues regarding dual income in this current economy that we live in is the potential for loss of jobs, and what are the effects of unemployment. Unemployment has a financial impact on families without a doubt. Family well-being depends on the way family members think about unemployment and their strategies for dealing with both the practical and the emotional needs. A series of reactions usually occur when there's job loss. First, usually the shock and denial, especially if the layoff is unexpected. Next is often anger, worry, anxiety. A sense of anticipation when they start a new job search can be both in trepidation as well as with a certain degree of excitement. Unemployment often undermines the individual's sense of self-esteem. If a man or his family holds the traditional values that the man provide financially for the family, losing a job means that he has failed as a person. some continuing on with losing a job and the effects of unemployment, work-family balance, a self-defined state where well-being that recognizes the interrelatedness of work life and life apart from work consists of three components. There's a time balance, equal time given to work and family roles. There's an involvement balance, equal levels of psychological involvement in work and psychological involvement in family roles. And then thirdly, satisfaction balance, equal levels of satisfaction in work and family roles. Now, ideally, this is what you strive for. You hope to have this strike this balance. It doesn't always work out this way. Need to be aware of some of the direct and indirect effects of looking for family work balance or the lack thereof, and one of them is called burnout. Burnout is a state that occurs when a person experiences prolonged stress without learning how to cope with it. It's often an emotional, physical, and psychological exhaustion, and they go hand in hand, as a result of burnout. Reduced sense of accomplishment, self-esteem, and loss of one's zest for life are the main characteristics of depression, but also a very significant representation of burnout. An overstressed individual may be irritated with and angry at family members. Burnout may reduce individuals' ability to cope with stress or to use proven methods in stress reduction. Now, in the workplace, there are more flexible work arrangements that can be made that enable family and work life to go more harmoniously. One is called flex time. This is a system of working a set number of hours with the starting and finishing dates chosen within agreed limits by the employee. Women with flexible work schedules feel less stressed by family responsibilities than those with more rigid schedules. You can also, in some places, work with what's called a compressed work week. And this is a schedule based on working longer shifts over fewer days. The long hours can, however, contribute to exhaustion and burnout. The hours make it difficult to look after family needs on working days. There's also telecommuting, which many people engage in, a work arrangement in which the employee works outside the office, often from home. It appeals to people who commute long distances every day and who don't want children to spend 10 hours or more a day in childcare, who want the flexibility to schedule daily work. Needs to be constantly connected and means where they're never really off the job and linked to lower family satisfaction in terms of telecommuting. You can also move to part-time work, which allows individuals to fulfill care responsibilities for children or older relatives. Women, more often than men, choose to work fewer hours. And then lastly, there is something that's called job sharing, a work arrangement in which employees share one full-time job and prorate salaries and benefits accordingly. Okay, well, I hope this has been helpful in looking at family and in the work world. Take it easy and have a good day. Bye now.